So if you want the right candidates for all your roles, ZipRecruiter is the place to.
And the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
And he scored!
Now live from inside the Ocean Casino Resort Studio, here's Josh Hennig.
Phillies are trying to salvage this series right now. Right now, it's Orion Kerkering. It is the top of the 8th inning, and the Phillies are still hanging on to a 5-3 lead. In fact, they haven't scored any runs for the last few innings. We'll keep you updated as we go throughout the hour here on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Josh Hennig hanging out with you as Orion Kerkering is trying to get this game closer to the finish line, and we'll keep you updated. Plus, tonight is the final Flyers game of the 2024-2025 season, and we'll get everything you need to know ahead of the final game with Flyers Insider Kevin Durso coming up. He's joining us in about 20 minutes from now, and as always, you guys can join the conversation at 609-403-0973 in your DMs into 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle as Orion Kerkering gets 2 strikeouts so far in the top of the 8th. We got a lot to get to this hour, but I wanted to start with kind of a follow-up. For those who didn't have a chance to get to read my article at 973ESPN.com, if you haven't read it yet, I just encourage you to go look at it because I believe that the Phillies' start to this season is predictable. What we have seen from the Philadelphia Phillies this year is very much on par with who they are. This is an organization that for years has been a slow starter. For years, they are an organization that gets out of the gate very, very slowly. It is not a coincidence that this organization continues to have these problems. Now, part of it is just the nature of baseball, okay? Part of the inconsistency, part of the up and down, part of all of it has to do with the reality that this organization, okay, for every intent and purpose, is an organization that has never been a fast-starting team. So you could argue that what we are seeing today is on par with who they are. They are a streaky team. They are a streaky organization. They are someone who we know they have strengths and weaknesses. Look, This team is going to make the postseason. History tells us that. But what history also tells us that if they don't make some improvements at the deadline, they will not win a World Series. Before today's game, the Philadelphia Phillies started the 2025 season 10-8. You look back at the last 6 times the Phillies reached the World Series. In 2022, they started the year 8-10. 2009, they started the year 10-8. In 2008, when they won the World Series, they started the year 8-10. 1993, 14-4. 1983, 11-7. And in 1980, 9-9. Aside from 1 year, 1993, this organization has famously or infamously, depending on who you ask, been unable to get out to major starts and have a strong finish. So if you're hoping for a red October, if you're hoping for this team to make a postseason run, 10-8 is exactly the start you were looking for. Now, it doesn't change the reality that for every good part we could point out about this team, getting out to an early lead is a big deal in a game like this. But they haven't scored for the last few innings since. This is a team that is one of the best in baseball in on-base percentage. They're one of the lowest in terms of runs scored this year. They are one of the best in baseball, second best actually, with the most walks. They're also high in strikeouts. So in no way I am vacating them or saying, hey, the mistakes that they have, the flaws they have, the mistakes they make, that we're justifying or excusing any of them. What we are saying is that at the end of the day, this is a good Phillies team. But to repeat the conversation we had earlier today on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN, Josh Hennig hanging out with you in the Ocean Casino Resort studio, this team will only go as far as Dave Dombrowski makes some moves at the deadline. And what those moves may be will be determined over the next 2 months. Because the news that came out earlier today about Brandon Marsh, and now he has a knee injury. Here's what Rob Thompson said to the media before today's game when it was revealed Marsh would not be in the lineup.
Is Marsh banged up?
Yeah. The play that he fell down on, where the ball skipped on him, he kind of turned his knee a little bit, twisted it, so he's a little sore. So we're going to keep him out today.
Which knee?
Right.
Just forgot.
Well, he's going to see the doc, and then we'll reevaluate.
So, 2 things I took away from that earlier today. One was, this is a great excuse to bench him and let him go down in the minors, get the knee better, and basically let him kind of hit the reset button with his bat. Obviously, a knee injury is always a little bit of a concern, but as long as it's not nothing serious, you can put him on the injured list, let him sit out for about a couple weeks, set him on a nice extra long rehab assignment, and he would be back for Memorial Day weekend. And then you get basically 2 months to evaluate him in center field again. And you know, as number 2, Brandon Marsh is actually injured. They're not making it up. Because when Nick Castellanos left the game today with what there was being reported to be a left hip flexor tightness. They did not say, well, Marsh might be well enough to go in there. No. They were very clear. Marsh is injured, and if Castellanos is injured, Marsh ain't going into this game. So when they had to pull Castellanos from the lineup, they put Edmundo Sosa in left field, and they moved Max Kepler from left to right. That's why right now in the game with 2 men on and no out for the Phillies, Edmundo Sosa is coming to the plate instead of Nick Castellanos. The Marsh injury might be a blessing in disguise because it's going to allow this team to eventually bring up Weston Wilson without having to crazily shuffle their roster. Although Cody Clemens has gotten as much playing time as you and me this year for the Phillies. But still, the larger point is that the Marsh injury is a convenient excuse to allow them to get him out of the lineup off the roster for a while so they can evaluate if they have any legitimate in-house options. Let's check in on the text board at 609-403-0973. Your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Vic from Ventnor chimes in and says, streaky. This will be 3 straight seasons with 90-plus wins. That's consistent. No, these games don't matter early. They are figuring out the pieces, the lineup, and trying to stay healthy. See, you're being literal, Vic and Ventnor. And as the world's foremost expert on being literal, okay? I'm not talking about the win totals. I'm talking about the style of play. I'm talking about the way this team goes hot and cold from night to night, from week to week, from month to month. There are a lot of players on this team who are not consistent players. Most of the players on this team, Vic and Ventnor, are guys who have a long history of going hot and cold. Nick Castellanos, Kyle Schwarber, Brandon Marsh is one of them, obviously. Trey Turner, at least in his Phillies tenure. Before he got to the Phillies, he was a very reliable hitter, and now he's turned into a streaky guy. Edmundo Sosa, streaky player. Style of play. This team is a boom or bust roster. They're either really great or they're really cold. So again, it's not about the 90-win seasons. It's about the style of play and the players they have on the team. And Vic, if you were listening to what I was saying, I was giving you a stat that shows that what happens early in the season does not impact this organization or team's ability to go deep into the postseason. Now, if you want to sit there and nitpick and say, what I'm saying is just an opinion, well, everyone's got an opinion, right? Nick from Delaware says he has an opinion at 609-403-0973. He says, my opinion is it's good we're not playing our best baseball in April. The best baseball should be from late July on, right? That's from Nick in Delaware. He says that's his opinion, and I think it's a fair opinion, Nick in Delaware. If you play your best baseball from July to September, you're probably going to be in a position to ride a hot streak into the postseason. Now, is it optically the best way to go? Maybe not. Maybe for some people that's frustrating because you look at the team and you want them to be consistent year-round, but coming out of spring training, not everyone is up to speed. And as I said, when you look at the stat that this team has many years losing in April, but going on postseason runs, I think it's very possible that this organization, right, this team, is in a situation where they are basically just waiting for their guys to come around. Person didn't leave their name. A texter says, the Phillies need to go out and get a bat, Josh. They need to go out and trademark and get R. Incaviglia for this team. That's a great analogy. You need that right-handed power bat that people have some fear of in the lineup. That's definitely going to make a difference. All right, we'll get back to text a little bit later this hour. Phillies trying to tie up this series. It's the bottom of the 8th inning. Giants are making a pitching change. We'll hit the break. We'll come back. Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN.com, joins me next. Flyers 2024-25 season ends tonight. We'll get into it with Kevin about the state of the team moving forward. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
For over 135 years, First Bank of Sea Isle City has proudly served Cape May County with a commitment to maintaining a hometown feel. We provide secure, convenient deposit and loan products every day. We're more than just a bank. We're a trusted community partner, offering personalized banking solutions that make life easier for local families of all ages. First Bank of Sea Isle City. Look for our lighthouse in your neighborhood and discover what makes us different.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Progressive knows not all rides are smooth. Meet Peter. He loves his motorcycle. What he doesn't love is wind. Which is ironic, because wind is a big part of the whole wind-in-your-face motorcycle cliche. But nobody ever tells you how relentless a strong crosswind is, or the cliche wouldn't exist. Not every ride is smooth, but Progressive has your back. Get a quote to see if you can save with America's #1 motorcycle insurer. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates, not available in D.C.
If a carpet refresh is on your to-do list, now's the time to check it off, because right now you can take advantage of our Buy More, Save More savings. The more you buy, the more you save, up to 15% on select special order carpet purchases. Plus, the Home Depot Home Services can handle the installation for you. All that's left is to enjoy that stunning new carpet and step into softness. The Home Depot, how doers get more done. Offer valid April 17th through May 4th. Receive up to 15% off special select order carpet purchases. Minimum purchase required. Exclusions apply. For licenses, see homedepot.com/license numbers.
ZipRecruiter is the place. ZipRecruiter is the place for talented teachers, savvy software developers, and master mixologists. ZipRecruiter is the place where you meet all these people and more. That's because ZipRecruiter is the place for job seekers who are looking for new opportunities. In fact, ZipRecruiter helps 10 million people with their job search every day, so you can find the right candidates right away. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/free. That's ZipRecruiter.com/free.
This is the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. First round of the NFL Draft in 1 week in Green Bay, Wisconsin. Coverage right here on 97.3 ESPN. The Eagles, as Super Bowl champions, will be picking last in the first round, the 32nd overall pick. They have 8 picks overall in the 7 rounds and have 4 selections in round number 5. The Tennessee Titans have the number 1 overall pick, followed by Cleveland, the New York Giants, the New England Patriots, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Flyers wrapping up their season tonight as they face the Buffalo Sabres. Philadelphia has 76 points, last in the Metropolitan Division, and they will miss the playoffs for the 5th straight year. They're coming off a loss to the Columbus Blue Jackets on Tuesday. Phillies and Giants wrapping up their series this afternoon. Christopher Sanchez got the start for Philadelphia. Giants went with Jordan Hicks. Phillies lost Wednesday 11-4, have dropped 5 of 7. Bryce Harper did hit a 2-run home run. Progressive Insurance, bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
Find what you love, love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines.
Only at Total Wine and More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
Good afternoon with your South Jersey weather forecast. I'm Joe Kelly. We're starting to head into the nice weather of spring, I think. We'll have a clear sky tonight, low dropping down to 42. Tomorrow looks excellent, lots of sunshine. high about 64. Can't say enough about Saturday. As of right now, Saturday looks like this. Lots of sunshine with a high temperature about 79. Yeah, look for Sunday, mostly cloudy with a high temperature in the upper 60s. Enjoy your evening with your South Jersey weather forecast. I'm Joe Kelly.
97.3 ESPN has teamed up with Seize the Deal for incredible weekly offers from some fantastic local restaurants. Here's this week's big deal.
Get a $50 gift card good for use at Island Grill in Ocean City for just $25.
Get this great deal starting Friday at 9 a.m. at seizethedeal.com. Hurry, chances are this deal will sell quickly. For more info on this great deal, go to seizethedeal.com.
This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Phillies now lead 6-3 heading into the top of the ninth inning. Jose Alvarado has come into the game, so we'll see if Alvarado can get that save and at least let the Phillies walk away with a split in this series. We'll see how that goes. But as we track that, Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN.com. Well, Kevin, you have endured another Flyer season with no postseason. But I think the good thing is, as we talk about the wrap-up of the Flyer season, the organization is at least, for the first time in a long time, going in the right direction, right?
Yeah, they have a plan. It's evident they have a plan. And to be honest, one of the things that I've seen over the last several days that really kind of drives this point home, and we're going to talk a lot about draft picks over the course of the offseason. A lot of, the key thing here with the draft picks is obviously their own draft pick in the first round is going to be the significant one. It's the one that we're going to focus on the most. And we don't exactly know where that's going to be, and we won't for a few more weeks. We're going to have an idea of their draft lottery odds after tonight, but we won't have a firm, definitive answer on where that pick is until the draft lottery on May 5th. But a lot of their other picks, and they have a bunch of second-round picks. They have 4 picks in the second round, pending their finish in the standings for their own pick. They already are guaranteed to have all of these other picks. All their second round picks had no conditions. They're guaranteed to get the 2 other first round picks because the condition on those was, I think Edmonton's was top 10 protected. Colorado's was top 12. That might be reversed, but either way, that was the 2 contingencies on those. Both of those teams, Edmonton and Colorado, are in the playoffs. So the Flyers get those picks. That is decided at this point. So again, those positions will depend on when Colorado and Edmonton are knocked out of the playoffs. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. But some of the results from the last couple of days, Calgary's not making the playoffs. They're going to be the first team out of the playoffs. The Flyers got their second round pick in the Morgan Frost, Joel Farabee trade in January. That pick, by virtue of that, is going to be 48th overall because of where Calgary finishes. Columbus misses the playoffs. They just found out last night they won't be making the playoffs by virtue of Montreal getting that final spot in the East. That means the Flyers are going to have the 45th overall pick based on Columbus's finishing spot because that was the end of their regular season ends tonight, but they can't improve standing position, so they are going to have that selection. And depending on what happens, if the Flyers lose in regulation tonight, which you hate to say it, loss in regulation is the goal, but it kind of is the goal because the Flyers would have the 4th best draft lottery odds. It would also lock them into pick 36 and 68 in the third round. Once we get to the third round situation, that would be 8 picks in the top 68 of this draft. So lots of possibilities there when you have that many picks early on. So, a lot of possibilities. I'll run down really quick the options for those lottery odds because that's the whole point of tonight. It's weird to say that game 82, no playoffs involved, that it matters in some ways. It's a very significant situation because obviously, like I said, they lose in regulation. They finish with the 4th best lottery odds. It would also guarantee them a top 6 pick in the draft because there's 2 lottery pulls. So they could go 1st or 2nd if they win the lottery. If 2 teams jump them, they could be 5th or 6th, but you get a top 6 pick. If the game gets to overtime and the Flyers get at least 1 point, Buffalo getting a point as their opponent would also finish ahead of the Flyers at that point. So that takes them out of the picture, but the Flyers would move ahead firmly of Boston and Seattle. They would get the 6th best odds. Now you're playing with 6, 7, 8. And if the Flyers were to win the game in regulation, they would also jump Buffalo in that case, and it would be 7th best odds and most likely a pick in the 7, 8, 9 range. So that's what's at stake. Usually when teams want to talk about a 3-spot jump in the draft, We're talking about a team that maybe trades a decent package, by the way, from 14 to 11 or 18 to 15 or 21 back into the top 20, for example. To do this and talk about a 3-point jump or 3-spot jump or gap in the top 10 is very substantial. So this game carries great meaning for where their draft lottery odds can end up. Obviously, if you have the 4th best odds, not only does it improve what happens if the worst case scenario happens and you fall 2 spots, it's going to give you a better chance of moving up to 1 or 2. And then you kind of really have a surefire pick in front of your face at that point and really can get one of those impact players that you partner up with Matvei Michkov going forward and see where that goes.
Now, for the audience out there who, let's be realistic, a lot of people are not following the NHL draft prospects like they maybe like the NFL. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So give the audience Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN.com at Kevin_Durso on the Twitter X platform as Phillies are still leading 6-4. Jose Alvarado trying to get the last out of the inning. That's obviously a ball. All right, he tried to go for the sweeper. Kevin, if you can explain to the audience, so like they have 3 first-round picks, okay? So for you, looking at the draft, right, is it a situation where you would be like, if you get a high pick, you want to keep the 1, then maybe trade the other 2? Is it a scenario where you want to bundle all 3 to trade up? Is that an option? Like, explain to the audience, like, what is the value here? Because, again, if it's the NFL draft, a fan could be like, oh, I saw Travis Hunter play at Colorado. I know who he is. In hockey, it's not the same vibe.
Yeah, well, so there's 2 things with that, because one is the season leading up to the draft for NHL prospects. The development process is way longer. It's not usually it's not immediate like we see in the NFL. There's exceptions to that, and we've seen a lot of them over the years. You think about like Connor Bedard, for example. That's an instant jump. You get drafted, you're on an NHL roster day 1. That does happen on occasion, but you usually have to pick first or second for that to happen. So it's not quite the same thing. And we see all the time, because of how long the season is for some of these draft prospects, that they're shuffling. Sometimes what everybody wants to believe is a true consensus number 1 pick doesn't always happen that way. Bedard was that case because, again, exceptional level player at his age, was an obvious first overall pick. But you also had, years like when the Flyers ended up with Nolan Patrick in the 2nd overall pick. For most of the year, he was the 1st overall projected pick. And then Nico Hischier kind of took the thunder a little bit down the stretch. Patrick was dealing with some injuries during his draft year, and it caused him to slip a spot. You think about all the things with Michkov, too, in that draft year. Bedard was the clear-cut number 1, but for a while, Michkov was the number 2. And then as the situation evolved and the idea that he might not be an immediate NHL player and you have to wait out a KHL contract, he slips and eventually goes to number 7 where the Flyers picked him. So it always shuffles a little bit. The fact of the matter is the value of a top 10 pick is extremely high. Quite frankly, the Flyers could try to take all of these picks. Maybe the fact that you have something possibly in the top 5 and could throw a couple more in there, maybe that entices a team. But I don't know that I would be selling the farm here and all 3 picks to move up to 1 because I have 4, let's just say, and throwing those 2 picks in. I would think more of you're going to keep your top 5 pick if it falls in the top 5, wherever it falls, and then look at those other 2 firsts and the early seconds and see if that can be created into a package that kind of gives you that, like I talked about. It's a substantial package usually to move up even so much as 3 spots. Say, there's a way where I wrote down the scenario. There's a way where if Colorado and Edmonton both get knocked out in the 1st round, if everything breaks the right way, and those are the 2 lowest of the teams, if the entire 1st round is essentially upsets, those are 2 of the lower teams in the standings, but that could get eliminated, and it could make those picks be as low or as early in the draft as 17th and 19th. It's also very possible that as long as they get knocked out in the 1st round, you're looking at minimum 23rd, 24th. Well, I can see them trying to move a 23rd and a 36th, let's say, to get to 20th. If they see a guy who's still sitting there at 20th, they go, I really like this guy. I want him on our team. I need to make that kind of move. So that's where I see the value of those picks. Is it's not going to be for anything in the top 15 more than likely. Once you're in the lottery and have a shot to move up in some capacity, you're probably holding that pick, maybe in the early teens, but I don't think that, they would have to have one of those really lucky scenarios where like one of these picks is 17th and then be able to talk about, can we get to 13 possibly? That doesn't feel too out of reach if you're already in the teens. if you're not and you're in the 20s, I don't think you're getting back into the top 20 per se, unless it's the very low teens and you really move a lot of picks. Like we could be talking one of those firsts, one of the early seconds, and their third just to make that happen. So you better be in love with the player that's sitting there at, say, 18, if that's where you're trying to get to. Otherwise, see what comes to you. And again, I don't, I've talked about this before with you. I don't think they're going to use all of these picks. I do think a trade is somewhere in the works here, but I don't think they're going to go crazy and move 3 or 4 of them either just to go up a couple of spots. I think they're going to be more strategic with it, see how the board plays out. They're going to have, we all can talk about who we think the draft prospects are that they should take and who could be there at this pick or that pick or whatever. They have their own board that they're going to follow. They're going to create their own ranking system that they're going to look into, and they'll use that to be the judge of whether or not they move up, move back, do something different, try to move the picks in general to get somebody more established and instead of a draft pick. That's all on the table, and we'll see where it goes when the draft actually rolls around.
All right, let me back you up a little bit because there's a lot that you just put out there for the audience. Kevin Durso, our Flyers Insider from 97.3 ESPN. By the way, the Phillies did win 6-4. Jose Alvarado was able to help the Phillies split the 4-game series with the Giants. Flyers back in action tonight, final game of the year here on 97.3 ESPN. So you mentioned about the options with the picks, and I want to zero in on a specific scenario because one of the conversations that I had recently with Scott Laughlin from Sirius XM NHL Radio was he brought up the fact that, like you said, unless there's a player, and there have been players in the late first, early second round that have turned out to be very good players, right? Pasternak is one that comes to a lot of people's minds. But if you don't have that guy, why not go out and get a proven commodity, right? Why not use those picks and say, hey, I want someone I need now. If the Flyers were to use one of these first-round picks, right, to make a deal, what kind of player do you think a Keith Jones, Danny Briere organization would want to target, like the type of player?
Well, first thing I would look at is positions that they have the greatest need in. And to be honest, we could go all over the board with this. I don't think they're going to go crazy about trying to get more wingers on the team. I think they might maybe draft a player that they think down the line could be of use to them. If that's the case, that certainly when you're talking wingers, think the late first picks, think the second round picks, take a flyer on a guy, see if he amounts to something down the road. They really need centers up front. They could use another defenseman, really in particular. They could use that number one guy more than anything. They got a bunch of guys who I would qualify as they could be in that 2 to 4 range. Like I think Travis Sanheim's a 2. I think that Cam York and Jamie Drysdale have the potential to be in that 3-4 range. But you really need that number one guy. And perfect example for most of the season when it came to this draft class, at the start of the year, James Higgins was the number one prospect, and he's a center, and that was the guy everybody kind of focused in on. And as the year has shifted, it's a defenseman that has emerged as the projected number one pick. And if the Flyers were to win the lottery, as much as they need centers, if they had the first overall pick, I think Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman there, would be the guy they take because he's got that top defenseman potential that they might want to take a swing on there and would solve one of their key problems. And then we can't ignore the fact that one of, pretty much, not just now, not just in the past 3 decades, but it's their Achilles heel, the goaltending. And would they use a pick to go and get a proven goaltender? Most teams aren't trading their proven goaltenders, but I'm sure that one of the areas that is out there on the table for this offseason is to at least find somebody else who maybe stabilizes the position better. I think they feel comfortable with Sam Ersson getting regular starts, but he's not a number one. He's a good tandem guy. And I think if they could get another veteran to play with him, because they really haven't found that comfort level with the other 2 guys that they've had play games for them this season, that's another area they might target. And who knows, you might throw a second or a third at a team to get somebody who's on the lower scale of that and just kind of bolster that position a little bit. So everything's kind of on the table there. I think that if you're looking at the specific types of players, from a defenseman standpoint, Sanheim can be a nice player on the offensive side, but he's not exactly, he is certainly not in the category of Cale Makar or Quinn Hughes or guys like that who have been putting up a ton of points over the years. They really could use that puck mover, that guy who really quarterbacks a power play well. So if you're out there looking for them, and that's exactly kind of where I come from with this, with the guy, with Schaefer, the guy projected to go number one, who's a defenseman. He's got those tools that would entice a team because he can be that number one guy from the offensive side as well. You think about also, we spent a ton of the year on Matvei Michkov, the Calder race. The guy who's going to probably win the Calder is Lane Hudson, the defenseman for Montreal, who is exactly that type of player. Puck mover, great skater, power play quarterback. He just got to, in last night's game when Montreal clinched the playoff spot, got to 60 assists. Matvei Michkov is sitting on 60 points. Hudson got to 60 assists. He's not really a noted goal scorer per se, but it doesn't matter. He's got all the makings of becoming a great player that has that offensive skill set, very much in the same vein as Cale Makar, who can put up a ton of points. Cale Makar got to 30 goals this year. So you're looking for guys like that. And I think that, so from a defensive standpoint, you want a guy with a little bit more size. And I don't think you want another 5'9", 5'10" guy, but you also want a guy who's got that skill set. And from a forward standpoint, they really could use a combination of things, really. I mean, they don't really need the small forward anymore, but you need the guy who does have that scoring touch. You know, you kind of want to find the guy who's got 40 goal potential. You kind of want to find the guy also, though, who has the size of a power forward who can add to that as well. And you certainly need to get faster as well. So all those things kind of come into play. The good news is sometimes you can find all those things in one guy. You can find a center who has 40 goal potential, is big, and also skates really well. So you're hoping that maybe that's on the table somewhere out there, but those are the guys that you're trying to find. And it's not always easy to do, but that's part of what you're doing right now in the rebuild process, is trying to get everything figured out as you move forward.
Yeah, they desperately need more top-end defensemen, because when, you and I have had this conversation before, Kevin, when you put Travis Sanheim next to elite defenseman during the Four Nations for Team Canada, he looked really good. When Travis Sanheim is your best defenseman, it's not the same. So you definitely, no matter what their age is almost at this point, 25, 30, I don't even care, 32, just get somebody in here. Go do what you got to do. Which brings me to the other question, which is, when you go into an offseason like this, obviously one of the issues we mentioned is defensemen, right?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, as a side note, I hope Michkov doesn't win the Calder, because I know it'll make him mad, and he'll come in the next season to play even harder. So there's kind of that part of me that wants, egg the young guy on, make him more mad, make him a little more edgy, Yeah,
I can assure you he's not winning it. I actually question whether or not he's even going to be a finalist for it, because there are three other guys.
Even more mad.
I know, because there's three other guys there, and I give, Macklin Celebrini played on the worst team in the league, still put up really good numbers, and Calgary just missed the playoffs, and a lot of that was due to Dustin Wolf. I think Dustin Wolf deserves a finalist position. Yeah. And then you're deciding between the last finalist spot between Michkov and Celebrini. And I think they're going to, I think more of the voters out there are going to give Celebrini the nod because of how he was utilizing his point totals, at least points per game wise. And I don't expect that to change anything. Michkov is going to get fueled by just about anything that's a negative towards him, which not only includes the award side of it, but also the lack of winning and the lack of making and not making the playoffs. Right. That is going to sit on his mind all offseason, and he's going to try to come back even better because of it.
But back to the defenseman thing.
Yes.
So the topic with that is, because, and I mean, it's been 15 years since the Flyers have had some really good defensive pairings, instead of having 1 year one, 1 year another. Building out the defenseman pairings. So do you think that is addressed best through free agency and trades? Or do you think this is a matter of, hey, Flyer fans, you might not want to hear this, but you might need to exercise a little patience in this department?
It's kind of a little bit of both, because first of all, it depends on, like I said, I think if they were placed with, the option of you can pick anybody in the draft, you have the first overall pick, and there's one really good, it's not a great defenseman draft. Certainly at the top, you might find if you don't pick with the first overall pick, you might find a defenseman that probably falls into the Sanheim York category in the 20s, but it's not really looking like that kind of draft for a defenseman. So I think that if you're given the opportunity to pick first overall, it's why you've got to really think hard about taking a defenseman right then and there to give yourself a shot with a guy like that. Otherwise, you are probably exploring the trade market to some degree. I don't know that there's going to be as much movement with that. I think right now they're at least comfortable with the idea that they may not be number one guys, but Sanheim's here, York's here, Drysdale's here. That's a core to try to build around. And, and I've had questions about Cam York's place in it, because he is an RFA. It doesn't mean they would just lose him for nothing in terms of that. They can offer him a contract, but it's becoming more and more likely that they haven't seen enough to give him a long-term deal. So he might take a really short-term bridge deal, 2 or 3 years in the offseason, which would adjust the price point on it, but also leaves the door open. Then in 2 years, you're trying to find another Cam York also in that situation. It's not going to finding guys like that is not going to solve your defensive problem completely. I do wonder for guys like Drysdale, guys like York, even to a degree, that if they had another guy who played who played in goal, who was a little bit better too, if you weren't trying to overcompensate for how you cover because of the goaltending, it kind of became evident as you looked at the save percentages down the stretch and overall as they finished the year. Sam Harrison's not playing tonight, so he's going to finish the year with an .883 save percentage. Ivan Fedotov was at .880. Alexei Kolosov was at .867. Like, these are abysmal save percentages, and some of that has to do with bad luck, and the few opportunities that are on goal are just unstoppable, and some of them are you need saves. So there is an element to it where if there's more confidence in your goaltender, you play a little differently and feel like I don't have to be in this spot and take this much of this guy away. I can kind of give myself a little bit more room to be able to play a pass better, to play, to control my gap a different way, because of the fact that I don't need to be right up on top of this guy and completely take him away and let my goalie make a save. When you think about like odd man rushes, sometimes your job as a defenseman on an odd man rush should be take the pass away, let the goalie see the shot. Well, if you don't have confidence that by taking the pass away, the goalie's going to stop the shot, you're going to kind of overplay that situation, and it leads to making you look just as bad as your goaltender does. So that's where I think we see some of those defensive issues as well. They're going to look for improvement in all sorts of ways. I think that when it comes to trying to trade or offer sheets, I've talked about sometimes, with this offseason, I don't think defenseman is their top priority because they're so thin at center that's why I think they lean on okay, Sanheim's here, York's here, Drysdale's here. We've got something to work with for now, and we can add to that as we kind of go through this process. We really want to see, at the end of the day, what they're going to probably tell you is they really want to see those guys continue to take steps forward more than trying to bring in another piece, unless it's really clear cut that top guy. At center, they need just about anybody they can get. So they really need to bolster the forward position first. And like I said, maybe look for a veteran goaltender as well before you kind of worry about whether or not you get another defenseman who kind of just fits into the same category as a lot of what they have.
Follow him on the X platform at Kevin_Durso. Check it, Durso. Excuse me, tough for me to say. Wow, I'm having a day here. Check out all of his coverage over at 97.3ESPN.com. Of course, tonight you can hear the Flyers game on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, free thanks to First Bank of Seattle. And, of course, as the offseason progresses, the story that we will also be following, and we'll be talking with Kevin as the weeks go on, the head coach search also is a factor. But today it's about the team and the players. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on. Always keep up the great work with the coverage, and we'll talk soon.
Absolutely. Sounds good, Josh. Thanks.
Josh Hennig here in the Ocean Casino Resort Studios, hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN. Goody from Galloway has got some interesting questions he wants answered, and we'll try to do that about the Phillies coming up next. They win 6-4 today. They split the series with the Giants as they prepare for their next series with the Miami Marlins. Getting all that and more coming up next on 97.3 ESPN. But first, today is one of the final days you have to qualify for the Eagles Draft Party Contest, where you have a chance to win a pair of Eagles Club Box tickets along with potentially a you're going to stay at Ocean Casino Resort. Tickets to different concerts and shows in Atlantic City, but you must be a qualifier by calling 609-573-3776. 609-573-3776, and you can qualify for the Eagles Draft Party, which will be held at the Gallery inside Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. Mike Gill and the Sports Bash Eagles Draft Party. You want to win the prizes? Call 609-573-3776, and you are in. Good luck.
With GMF financing, qualified buyers excludes Traverse and Corvette excludes prior sales.
Why is Bennett Chevrolet the area's most popular dealer? It's simple. Bennett sells new Chevys at the true GM supplier employee prices, not a penny more. Plus, Bennett gives you all the rebates, saving you up to 20% on your new vehicle. And there's more. Bennett's got available 0% financing, saving you even more money. And there's never any hassles, no haggles, just the best prices you can find. Plus, if you're looking for pre-owned, Bennett's giving you a minimum $10,000 for any trade you can bring. Yes, a minimum 10 grand for any vehicle you can get here. And you guessed it, there's no hassles, no haggles, just a minimum 10 grand for any trade. Savings up to 20% on new vehicles. A minimum $10,000 for any trade towards any pre-owned in stock. And there's never any hassles, no haggles, and no negotiating needed with our non-commissioned sales team. They're paid on your satisfaction. Together, let's drive. Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
I can't sleep.
What is it now?
It's the company. It's chaos.
What's chaos now?
The numbers, the expenses, the books. What if we get audited?
No one's gonna audit you at 3 a.m. Go to sleep.
I can't sleep.
You could if you used Ramp.
Who said that?
I don't care because they're right. Go to sleep and sign up for Ramp in the morning, Jerry.
Ramp is the corporate card that handles all your tedious financial operations automatically, integrates directly with your ERP, and gives you complete control over every transaction. Ramp gives you everything you need for bulletproof books and a better night's sleep.
Wow, that is exactly what my company needs.
Yes, and exactly what I also need. Go to sleep, Jerry.
Upgrade to Ramp for free today and get $250 at ramp.com/radio. Ramp.com/radio. That's ramp.com/radio.
Cards issued by Sutton Bank, members FDIC. Terms and conditions apply.
When you switch to Progressive, you could save bundling your home and auto. Then you could put that money towards some of the surprisingly more expensive things in life.
May I help you? I just wanted to request a late checkout, please. Of course. That's $30 per hour for up to 4 hours. Huh. Okay, but if you can offer a late checkout, then that probably means no one is staying in that room. So if it's empty, maybe I can just stay a few extra hours. Oh, aren't you adorable?
Life costs a lot, so bundle and you could save with Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
This is a story of the one. As a maintenance specialist for university housing, he knows college students can major in wear and tear. Plus, housing so many students doesn't leave a lot of room to house all the supplies he needs. That's where Grainger comes in. With over 1 million industrial-grade products and fast, dependable delivery, Grainger carries the quality products he needs so he doesn't have to. From a new door hinge to a whole new faucet. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan.
Hey guys, millions of men experience ED, but not everyone can access or afford treatments like Viagra. At HIMSS, our own board-certified urologist, Dr. Peter Stahl, knows this better than anyone, and he knows that HIMSS can help.
Hi, I'm Dr. Peter Stahl, Senior Vice President of Men's Sexual Health at HIMSS. I've helped many guys with ED, and it has never been more convenient to treat than it is right now, thanks to HIMSS.
Through HIMSS.com, you can access a full range of treatment options for ED, including daily or as-needed meds through a 100% online process. If prescribed, your medication is shipped to you for free. Find the ED treatment that fits your needs. Options at up to 95% less than the brand names when you get started at hims.com/joy. To start your free online visit and find ED treatment at up to 95% less than brand name prices, go to hims.com/joy. That's hims.com/joy for your free online visit.
Wow, it's you, the Capital One Bank guy.
That's what they call me.
Mind if I get a selfie?
Yeah, sure thing. Say no fees or minimums on your Capital One checking account.
Wow, that's a keeper. So, where are you heading?
I'm off to spread the good news that Capital One helps people keep more money in their wallet with no overdraft fees.
Oh, you're the best Capital One Bank guy.
Hey, mind if I get a selfie?
Sure.
Say, Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com/bank for details. Capital One N.A. member FDIC.
Right now at the Home Depot, shop Spring Black Friday savings up to 35% off select appliances plus free delivery from top brands like Samsung. Get tech you can trust to simplify your daily routines. From all-in-one washer dryers to smart refrigerators with Family Hub. Upgrade your kitchen and laundry with trusted technology from Samsung, ranked #1 in customer satisfaction. Get Spring Black Friday appliance savings and free delivery now at the Home Depot. Visit jdpower.com/award Awards for more details. Free delivery on appliance purchases of $396 or more. Offer valid April 3rd through April 23rd. U.S. only. See store online for details.
Sebastian Maniscalco.
Now, is this a family? Is this your mother? Where is she? Is she in the crowd? The mom's up there. What kind of family is this? I'm sorry.
It Ain't Right Tour 2025.
The poor mother is in the balcony, and the kids are down here with the father and his gumad. If this was the 80s, the kids would have been up there, and the parents would have been down here.
The biggest comedian in the history of Atlantic City. Live at Ovation Hall and Ocean Casino Resort, September 18th to 28th. Get tickets now at theoceanac.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and on the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
I want to get to the text coming in from Goody because I thought he asked some really great questions at 609-403-0973. Also, your DMs into the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle. Of course, we're also live on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig, where you can see the Ocean Casino Resort studio behind me. But Goody from Galloway says, I think the Phillies have a lot of questions to answer. And so he lists the questions. 1. How does Andrew Painter and Ranger Suarez exist in this rotation? Goody, I think the original plan for the Phillies is I think they want to put Walker out of the rotation into the bullpen when Ranger Suarez comes back. Then they will see how Ranger is. Because remember, this is the third different time he has had back issues. So if this is the third different time he has had back issues, that is something to keep an eye on. The Phillies want to know, is that going to flare up? Is he going to have any issues? Is there any concerns about his endurance, his stamina, his pitching ability, right? Because we know Ranger historically has been a cool customer. Does that continue? If it doesn't continue, if Andrew Painter looks like everything they say he is and more, then Ranger joins Taijuan Walker in the bullpen. You know, they keep saying like July-ish is the time frame for Andrew Painter. So my working assumption is that's how they would coexist. Or they might go to a six-man rotation where needed. And maybe what they do is in certain scenarios, they'll skip one of the other starts. Maybe they alternate the starts of each guy, maybe to give them more rest. There's a variety of ways they can go about it. Goody says, where does the right-handed bat come from, and what do we give up to gain that player? Well, I thought Mike Gill on the Sports Bash brought up a great point earlier today on 97.3 ESPN, which is depending on the caliber of that player, depending on the caliber of the bat that you go out and get, I think that is going to say a lot about what is or isn't, because what you're going to give up. If you get a player who is, to use an example, better than Nick Castellanos, it's probably going to cost you a player like Justin Crawford or another top prospect not named Painter or Aiden Miller. If you get a right-handed bat who's just a platoon with, let's say, Max Kepler, then you're probably giving up like a pitching prospect. Like, remember a few years ago when you gave up Ben Brown to the Cubs to get Dave Robertson? That's probably what you're talking about. So I think it just depends on the caliber of player you're talking about is what you will give up. He goes on to say, does Bryson Stott and Alec Bohm both have long-term futures on the team? I think that the future of Bohm and Stott in Philadelphia will be determined by this season. I think Philadelphia is very concerned, whether they want to admit it publicly or not, that the organization used draft capital on two players. Remember, these are both top picks in the first round of the Major League Baseball draft. That they are hoping that Bohm and Stott can be part of the future, because if they're not, that means that the organization wasted not one, not two, not three draft picks at the top of the draft, and they got nothing out of it. Moniak was already a bust. Complete fail by the organization. can the organization stomach the idea that Bohm and Stott also as well? Now, I think Bohm has a higher ceiling at this point than Stott does, because I think Bohm has shown you he has the ability to be a 100 RBI caliber third baseman. He's an all-star last year. I think for Bohm, whatever the hang-up is for him, if he can work his way out of it and finish this year strong, he is on this team long-term. Now, whether he's the third baseman or not, we'll find out one way or the other. Stott is the question mark on top of all of this, because the Phillies' top prospect is Aiden Miller. Aiden Miller is an infielder. Whether Aiden Miller plays shortstop, third base, second base, whatever, the reality is that if Aiden Miller is here, Bryson Stott is probably not. Unless Stott starts excelling as the leadoff hitter that he's become, and he proves that they have to keep him, then they might evaluate, okay, do we put Aiden Miller in left field? Do we put Bohm at first, Harper in left field, and Aiden Miller at third? That's where that comes in. But I think if I had to choose between the two, I think Bohm, his future probably is a little more set than Bryson Stott is. Goody goes from Gallagher's on to say, is JT a viable starter? As a defensive catcher, yes. As an offensive hitter, probably not. I don't know if... See, the problem with Javier Marchand is he has this injury history. And when you have an injury history, it tends to create an environment where you can't trust the guy week in and week out. I think Marchand is a placeholder. Like, for example, Edmundo Sosa, he is not the long-term answer at any position. He's an incredible utility player. So, JT, they might bring him back on a discount because his offense is not for a bona fide offensive caliber impact player anymore. He's a good, not great player at this point. And then the final question, the bullpen. They got to address the bullpen before the deadline. To me, if you don't walk out of the deadline with at least one really good right-handed reliever and a really good right-handed bat, then no, you are not making it back to the World Series. Flyers' final game is next on 97.3 ESPN.
You have the choice, whether it's going out to dinner or ordering take.
All right, before we get out of here, Josh Hennig on my YouTube channel, at Josh Hennig. Of course, as you always know, like, subscribe, share it with your friends. Before we get out of here, I did want to address a subject that is not really of consequence to the 97.3 ESPN audience, and that topic is Aaron Rodgers. I understand that Aaron Rodgers is a polarizing figure, and I understand that no matter what I say, good or bad about him, is going to be taken a certain way. So I'm just going to say it anyway, and you all can decipher it and disseminate it however you want. So Aaron Rodgers was on the Pat McAfee show today. And on the show, he talks about basically his football future. And he says apparently during, and I got to go back and listen to the whole thing because I think it's hard to tell when you just see clips of somebody and when you just see quotes, it's hard to know the context of some of those conversations. So I will admit I am going to go back and watch the full interview to get the whole context. But apparently during the segment, Rodgers basically said that he is dealing with some personal issues. And if those personal issues basically don't rectify themselves, that he is just going to retire and not play anymore. And if you know anything about Aaron Rodgers, whether it's based on reading Ian O'Connor's book about him, which I highly recommend, is an incredibly insightful book into who Aaron Rodgers is, past, present, and future, or if you've just listened to him week in and week out on the Pat McAfee show, you realize that Rodgers is not a flippant individual. He is not somebody who makes rash decisions. Now, you may not like his decisions, you may not agree with his decisions or his statements or whatnot, but he is not an individual who says or does anything with a flippant attitude and mentality. So for him to come out and admit that he is dealing with personal problems that are preventing him from making a clear decision yet on his football future, I think is a clear sign that his football future is either done or almost done. Aaron Rodgers, whatever the personal issue is obviously distracting him. Now, it's not his obligation to tell us what those issues are, but I think at some point he's going to need to tell the world what is going on, because this is a man who has made a lot of his personal beliefs and views very public. Again, whether you agree or disagree with them is not the conversation here. We are just acknowledging who and what Aaron Rodgers is. So if who and what Aaron Rodgers is an individual who will go out of his way to tell you his beliefs about the world, about politics, about the pharmaceutical industry, about all kinds of stuff, it seems a little odd for him to turn around and say, I'm dealing with personal problems, but I'm not going to tell you about it because it's personal, when he's willing to put all of his other personal beliefs and views and activities out in public. Rodgers has been very public about a lot of stuff that, frankly, I don't know how many people would be willing to admit. And McAfee it's almost a running joke with him that he makes fun of the fact, and Rodgers is good-spirited about it, okay? Rodgers doesn't take a personal offense to it, but, McAfee basically makes fun of him for all of the new age, modern psychedelics that he uses, and the darkness retreats and the smoking of the hash and all the stuff that Rodgers does in the off season. He's been very open about this stuff, to the point where, frankly, if I was Aaron Rodgers, I don't know if I would admit some of this stuff, because one, I wouldn't do it. And two, Aaron Rodgers is in a very weird headspace, because when you have the money and the resources that professional athletes do, you can experiment with stuff that I don't know if everyone's willing to experiment with, right? So I am very, 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 very curious about, what is going on with Rodgers' personal life, that he's not even willing to say anything about it. That makes me very, very suspicious. Okay? So I just kind of wanted to put it out there that if Rodgers is saying that there's a problem, I'm a little concerned that maybe that problem is a lot bigger than we realize, if he's not willing to talk about it. And if that's the case, I think it's fair to say his football career is done. Thanks for watching my YouTube channel, The Post Show. Like, subscribe, share with your friends. Josh Hennig back tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle, and right here on my YouTube channel at Josh Hennig. Have a great everybody. Take care, and I'll catch you tomorrow.